Navratri is a very auspicious time for Hindus, and for Hindus for Human Rights, during Navratri, we meditate on the mother goddess in all her aspects as she slays the enemies of peace, truth, and justice. Navratri wishes to all of you. My name is Sunita Viswanath, and I'm the co-founder and executive director of Hindus for Human Rights. We co-founded this organization in the wake of Narendra Modi's re-election in the summer of 2019. I was alarmed to find that despite the fact that Modi's Hindu nationalist government tarnished the name of Hinduism, I could not find a group who spoke with a Hindu voice against the weaponization of our faith and against intolerance and communal violence. Instead, I saw Hindu American organizations rally for Modi in Houston and cheer India's precipitous fall into majoritarianism. We co-founded Hindus for Human Rights then to reclaim Hinduism and to provide a space for Hindus around the world to unequivocally denounce the persecution of minorities in India, to stand opposed to Hindu extremism, Hindutva, and caste. That same summer, we were the only Hindus standing with placards outside the ugly display of hatred dubbed Howdy Modi, and my placard read, "Real Hindus don't lynch." To understand what's happening in India today, you have to understand the Hindu nationalist movement. The movement known as Hindutva wants India to become a state for and by Hindus only. Hindutva leaders will allege that the word Hindutva means Hinduness, but the tenets of Hindutva are antithetical to the Hinduism that I practice. While Hinduism celebrates diversity, Hindutva wants to create a mono identity for Indians and Hindus grounded in sexism, casteism, and above all, religious supremacy. While Hindus for Human Rights is proud of an India where people of all faith traditions exist together, Hindutva seems ashamed of this pluralistic vision of India. The Hindutva movement emerged in the early 20th century with the founding of the RSS, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, as an alternative to the democratic movement that eventually won India its independence. Hindutva leaders believed that an independent India could only thrive if Indians rallied around a nationalist Hindu identity and were led by a strong authoritarian. Despite their efforts, Hindutva was pushed to the fringes of Indian politics, and from the fringes they wreaked terror, even going so far as to assassinate India's national icon, Mahatma Gandhi, whose 153rd birth anniversary we commemorated yesterday. At the same time, leaders of the movement methodically carved a path to the mainstream, and now India's government is led by a lifelong and ardent RSS supporter, Narendra Modi. In this position, Modi has stacked his government with fellow Hindu nationalists, and together they have cracked down on anyone who dares criticize the government's project to transform India into a Hindu nationalist state. Through the use of anti-terror laws, such as the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, to arbitrarily arrest critics of Hindutva, the introduction of state-level anti-conversion laws, and the passage of the Citizenship Amendment Act, the Indian government clearly wants to silence and persecute minorities. Just last week, Indian authorities arrested more than 100 members of Islamic organizations, including the Popular Front of India, for supposed anti-national activities. In reality, these activists were arrested for the crime of being Muslim. At the same time that the Indian government has cracked down on critics of Hindutva, the Indian government has allowed people to attack minority communities with impunity. This is unsurprising for a government led by the same man who, as Chief Minister of Gujarat, refused to intervene when Hindu mobs terrorized Muslims during the 2002 Gujarat pogroms. When Hindutva mobs repeated the violent pogroms of 2002 in Delhi in 2020, Modi said nothing. In December 2021, when Hindu leaders, saffron-clad leaders, called for the genocide of Muslims, Modi stayed silent. Over the course of his career, Modi refuses to denounce anti-minority violence, and he knows that his strategic silence is tacit approval for the violence. I ask UN member states to call on Indian government officials to denounce hate speech that's targeted violence against minorities in their recommendations to the Indian government. To be clear, the Indian government is an active persecutor of India's minorities, but Modi's strategic silence allows him to deny that well-documented fact that the Indian government persecutes these minorities. The Indian government must be forced to denounce on the record the political movement that drove it to power and the anti-minority violence we all know that it encourages. This is not enough, of course, and my fellow panelists will outline. Member states should ask the Indian government as well to repeal the many laws that restrict the abilities of minorities to exercise their full rights as Indian citizens. Thank you.